And I think a key part of your marketing has to be that you're constantly marketing the problem. I think too many people spend all their time marketing the solution. Like, we're talking about this thing that we do and how we do it, and it's a special thing, and we're so special. And
or maybe they're talking a lot about themselves.
Yeah, we'll pat ourselves on the back because this solution that we built is so great. In reality, what they need to know first is you understand their problem.
Welcome to episode 6 of Built on Brand. Today we're going to be talking about sales and marketing. As always, I'm Jake Huber, managing partner of SPLYCEHOUSE. And to my left is Levi Kirby, my business partner. To my right is Seth Waite of Schaefer. Today we're going to be talking about sales and marketing. This is not something that Levi and I are experts in. Seth here is an expert in this. He's sold 5 of his 6 businesses. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not by accident. That takes good sales and marketing. Seth, we talked about niching in episode 2. If you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. But what comes next? After niching, what follows that process?
Yeah, so what typically happens is you're going to come in and really pick a position in the market, right? So you're saying, hey, we do this, we sell this, and everybody thinks about that product or service right away. And then the next step is, in this wide world of other people that sell this same thing we do, where are we and where are the gaps? So that positioning, niching, all that happens really early. It should, at least. Most of the time, it kind of happens early. And then you have a freak out moment a year or 2 into the business. And then it's just a continuous process of, where do we position ourselves as the market changes and adjusts?
We can relate.
And yeah. And how do you, and everyone can. Like, there's not a business out there that isn't constantly reassessing and adjusting their position. So that is super normal. And it is part of the process because we work in living, breathing industries and categories that have new technology and new entrants, and people adjust and change. So that's super normal. But what happens is, once you pick that position, that niche, that place in the market, then after that, you have to figure out, how am I going to let the world know that we exist, that this is what we do? And then the part that really matters, right, is once they know that, how am I going to get them to buy this thing, this product, this service? So sales and marketing are really that next step after you have the strategy portion of, this is where we fit and this is why. And that'll often lead into, and these are the most important things. And in all of the sales and marketing conversations and that early strategy work, they should be really consumer focused. Like, if they're not built around your customer, then you're doing it wrong. And it should be a balance, though, because you also don't want to show up and say, well, the people in the market only want these things. You have to balance that with what you can also provide. So there is a sweet spot of saying, we have our own business strengths and weaknesses and our own strategy that we're trying to achieve. Maybe we want to be a certain size. We want to be a certain player in the market. Like, we want to be the very best. And then you have to layer that in with what the customer also wants. And that intersection point is the sweet spot where you're getting what you want and the customer's getting what they want. And all of a sudden it's magic. And everyone's like, this feels really good. So marketing is about making that come to life and basically taking those 2 strategies, those 2 points of interest between the customer and the business, and saying, everybody, like, here's who we are, here's what we're doing, and here's why that should matter. Come work with us, come buy our product, come have this experience.
Levi, when we brought on a sales guy, we didn't have a marketing engine. We had no structure around our business of what we were even selling. So talk to us a little bit of what you've learned from that process.
Yeah, I think the number one thing of this whole episode that I have definitively learned is that marketing and sales are different. And they're both very important, and they both need each other, and they go hand in hand, but they are different and they should be treated as such. I think to your point about early on in our, in the SPLYCEHOUSE business, we were kind of all things to all people. We didn't, we didn't even have a demographic, let alone an ICP. We were just, if you need video, call us. That's really hard to sell. It's really hard to market. It's even harder to sell, and it's even harder to scale. So, which takes us back to episode 2, the niching discussion. But yeah, I think if I've learned anything, they are both very important and both very different.
But Seth, so when we figured out our niche, now we have to start figuring out marketing. Mm-hmm. What's where do you begin? Where do you start there?
So in my mind, marketing is just 3 things. And I like to try to keep everything simple all the time because it's easy to get caught up in a million different points of interest. But I think about marketing as just 3 simple things. Have clients and prospects seen what it is I do? So we call it see, want, trust. Do they see us? Do they know that we exist? Do we have visibility? Most of the time, you don't. So I always go back to step 1 of marketing is the most important, which is just general awareness. Help people see you, and that changes everything. The second one is want. So do your potential customers want what you have? And I actually think most businesses spend a majority of their time worried about that piece right there. That's the conversation. And it's easy to get caught up in constantly trying to refine your service or your product, and almost obsessively. You can spend way too much time trying to improve every aspect of your product and service so that people want it more, when your real problem is they just don't know you exist in the first place, or you're talking to the wrong people who actually want what you already have. So the want piece is that attraction component. Are people drawn to this? Is this solving a real need? And then the third bucket is trust. And that is, do I trust, as a potential customer of yours, do I trust that you can deliver the things that I want? You've shown me something that I want to purchase, and maybe a partnership or a relationship or whatever. I want this. Do I actually believe you can deliver it? And when those 2 things come together, that's how sales turns on, and that process then takes it from there. But when it comes to marketing, the heavy lifting is actually in the C stage, because I think most businesses do a fairly good job at want and trust.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is a good place for a small brand that doesn't have a lot of money to start? Is that organic social media? Because I've been seeing a lot of people giving away all their best information, just talking on camera, and the algorithm's feeding something I'm looking for. It's not only building awareness, but a little bit of trust, in the sense that if I see them as an expert, now I'm starting to ask, maybe this person can help me. Is that so? Would you recommend people start at organic social media for free?
Yeah. And the reason why is because it doesn't cost you anything other than time. It forces you to refine your messaging and how you talk about yourself. It solves a lot of strategic problems, because you have to talk about things that people want. You have to build trust, right? You're doing the full marketing experience through the lens of this content. And I can give you examples. So this last year as a business, Schaefer's not, massive from that perspective, but Sydney Schaefer and I were business partners, and we decided, hey, we're going to put more time and energy towards LinkedIn because we think there's an ROI there. We can get our time will really turn into something. Our business right now is completely built around inbound leads from LinkedIn. And we've only been investing in LinkedIn since last September. Really, that's when we started putting in the work and going, we're going to write a post every single day for the most part, 5 days a week. So Sydney and I have been doing that for the most part since last September. And we've crossed over the 5 million impressions mark in the last, 9 months, 8 months, something like that. So in that time period, we've seen huge volume, and that the reach is, it's one thing to get impressions, but the part that's really mattered to us is that it's translating into people engaging with our brand and getting to know us, and then turning into direct messages. We're getting DMs on the platform, and we're getting people coming to our website, filling out our contact form. And it always goes back to, I saw something on LinkedIn, or even more importantly, I've been watching you guys for the last couple of months, and you really resonate. And so the cool part there has been most of the time, these are people that have never liked a post. They've never commented. They've shown zero signs of engagement. It's like they come out of the woods, you know, like all of a sudden you're just like, where have you been? I'm so glad you're here.
I think an important piece of that puzzle and that strategy is curating the right audience, right? And which starts with knowing who your audience is.
Yes.
Because I was just having a conversation the other day about LinkedIn, and I'm like, I would rather have 100 impressions or engagements from the right people than 10,000 from the 100%. Wrong people. So I think you guys have likely done a lot of work curating, you know, an appropriate audience for your business. So that way all of the work you're putting into that content is being seen by people that you want it to be seen by, right? I think that's a big piece of the puzzle.
And the magic has been in that specifically, we have to have content that's interesting enough to people outside of our niche and to people within. So the magic behind most algorithms is it's really about the first 30 to 60 minutes of when you post. Now, LinkedIn has recently changed their algo over the last couple of weeks, and that's slightly different than it was a month ago. But in the process, if we don't get a little bit of mass market adoption where people are like, that's just generally interesting to me, then it's hard for us to reach our niche audience. So our goal is always build something that's applicable specifically to our niche, but has enough interest and intrigue and will stop to scroll that we'll get likes from a much bigger audience. And that's been an interesting kind of finding to try and find that sweet spot.
Yeah, it's like mass appeal meets niched messaging at the same time.
It's complicated, but that's how you have to kind of work in an algorithmic, you know, marketing landscape. On every platform. And so that's how we've been reaching people is we talk about brands and consumer psychology that everyone can go, oh, I buy Oreos. I've never thought about that, or whatever the deal is. And there's this aha moment, but people in the industry go, the difference between them and everyone else is, I wonder what they could do with my brand.
Yeah. It's the thought leadership where you're talking about something that they can relate to.
Yeah.
For what they're trying to get.
Only about 30% of our viewers on all of our content are actually food and beverage, which is our industry. But for us, that's great. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's a pretty high percentage, honestly.
And so we focus on, we want seniority and we want industry, and we want them in those kind of percentages, 30, 40%.
Now on a curveball, how did you figure out what to talk about? That it's because there's so many things you could talk about, but to get to be specific and make people relate that to their own brand
and provide value.
How do you figure that out?
We just tested. Like we just kept working on it. We've tried so many different topics and styles. There are topics where it's like, we're actually world-class at this capability and no one cares. So that is part of the conversation where you do have to find the see, want, trust component. We also layer it in knowing some things help us get seen and other things help us with the want and the trust. And it's about layering those things. So our model is usually that 1 or 2 days out of every week, we have a post that we want to get as many views as possible. And then the way that most algorithms work is that then the day after and the day after that, those 2 next days, those are the 2 days that we layer in the want and the trust factors of like, here's the things we do, and here's some proof around why we're good at it. Because the algo then shows everyone those next posts. And so those are the 15 like posts, you know, where you're looking at each other going like, that was a huge amount of work and not a lot of show. But those are the ones that actually that drive the DMs. And so it's been an interesting conversation because we don't ever expect one post to do the heavy lifting. Kind of like the Instagram conversation earlier, like we expect people to go to multiple channels and connect with us. And in our mind, it's multiple posts. They're going to have seen 6 or 7 or 10 posts before they reach out and say, I think we have a problem in our business and we might be ready for a project.
Yeah. And Levi, what do you think about sales and marketing and why they often get combined?
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants sales, right? It's easy to jump to, can this sell for me? Because that's what drives revenue. But I think and not to mention people, especially on social media, people don't want to be sold to. So and my there's like a million marketing sales analogies to be had, but like in my mind, I always think of like marketing is the quarterback, sales is the wide receiver. Like first off, they need each other and they cannot operate independently. But wide receiver can't catch the ball until the quarterback throws it. So, but they also have to be on the same page and in alignment on objectives and goals and missions. And so, I think it's just really easy to want all of your marketing to also sell, because who wouldn't? But, marketing, in my mind, marketing opens up the door for me and us to then create relationships in which then we can start selling, because marketing is all about, all these things, awareness and branding and trust, and sales, number one, in my personal experience, is about relationships. So marketing just, opens the door and brings in the people for me to have conversations with, to ideally build a relationship upon. And then we can start worrying about sales. That's kind of how I look at it.
Well, and that's what I noticed with your post, Seth, is that there's no ask at the end of the post. Like, hey, I wrote this whole thing about Oreos. Reach out to us so we can help you with your similar Oreo brand. I see a lot of people doing that, and that feels like that can tarnish the entire objective. Yeah. What do you think about that?
If you're just providing value, you don't need a CTA.
Right.
Exactly. And that's always the conversation for us, is like, you'll know when you want to work with us. So what we always kind of think about is, by the time you direct message us, you're typically converted to the way we think. Like, you've seen enough of our content that when you get on a call with us and now we're in sales mode, we don't have to sell you on this is our methodology and this is what makes us different. You kind of come in already preaching.
And your marketing's done the heavy lifting, like we talked about.
You're a convert, basically. You're like, hey, I believe what you're talking about. Now, how do we do this for us? Right. Here's our situation. And that's when you get into the solutions and the conversation. So I think if you're consistent enough in your marketing and they know, oh, this is for me, you work with people that look like me, that have problems like me. And I think a key part of your marketing has to be that you're constantly marketing the problem. I think too many people spend all their time marketing the solution. Like, we're talking about this thing that we do and how we do it, and it's a special thing, and we're so special.
Or maybe they're talking a lot about themselves.
Yeah, we'll pat ourselves on the back because this solution that we've built is so great. In reality, what they need to know first is you understand their problem. So almost all of our viral-ish posts on LinkedIn, they're all problem posts. And we have a 70, we kind of think about it as like 70, 20, 10. 70% of our content is marketing the problem. We're just showing them we get it. We get what you're dealing with. We don't get into solutions. We just show them examples. 20% then is marketing the process. So like, what does it look like to solve this problem? Not necessarily even with us, but how would you go about this? What are some of those tactical things, so that that's where you're building the trust factor? And then the final 10% is the rare proof post. So this is like, hey, this is us coming in with a case study or an example of work we've done. So
do you think there's a true science to sales strategy, or is it just marketing, knowing the product well enough that the marketing carries it?
Yeah, I could debate this topic, because for me, it's like, is it science? Is it intuition? Like, what is it? But I've seen a lot of really smart people suck at sales. So some of it comes down to, is it because they didn't know how to do it? I think that is the case in some situations. They just don't understand how that works. But I have also met a lot of salespeople, you guys probably too, where you're like, you've been through all the courses, you've got all the certifications, but you're terrible at this. Because to Levi's point,
I've seen it.
You're not good with people.
Yeah.
And sales is ultimately, it's that final step of trust.
Yeah.
And it's a relationship component more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I've never studied a sales strategy book in my life. My strategy is and this may sound like I'm patting myself on the back or something, but I mean, it's just honesty and authenticity. And like, you know, like I don't want to try to convince you that you need to work with us.
Yeah.
I would prefer you want to work with us because of the value that we are providing, you know? So, and if that's truly where we're at, you know, and maybe that's not the best mindset in terms of revenue generation as a business owner, but like, you know, we have lots of other goals besides revenue generation. And I think people appreciate that. And then you're not really strategizing or selling. You're just having a conversation. And if it works, because, you know, we're looking for partners. We tell people all the time, we're not looking to make one-off sales and this and that. We're looking for partners, long-term partners. Yes. And you don't really need a sales strategy to become partners with someone. You need to be aligned on objectives and value. And you know, that's relationship is everything.
Yeah, the value has to be there. And I think sales probably gets a really bad rap simply because of the whole kind of used car sales approach where it's like, let me force this thing into something maybe you don't even need. And I think sales could be a lot easier if that wasn't how people
perception.
How people approached it. I don't think it should be that difficult, right? I mean,
it should be an alignment conversation rather than a manipulation. Yes. And so much of the like sales guru style people that make you just feel like ick, especially when you've experienced them trying to sell you. It's the fact that they don't have your best interests in mind, and you can tell. And so that's the disconnect you feel, is when it feels like they're following some formula that you're not a part of. Like your interests aren't in that formula. Right. It's just, can I get you to do this thing, and can I manipulate you into the process?
Point A to point B.
Yeah. It's totally different when it's the opposite, which is, hey, we obviously have some objectives as a business. We're going to be really clear and honest with you about those. And you have some. And in the process, we're going to find out if those two things align and work out. And if they do, we're going to love the relationship that we have, and we're going to deliver, and you're going to get what you want. And there'll be hard moments, but like, that's just part of any relationship. That's such a different experience than you sign this DocuSign that we sent over and you instantly regret the experience because you felt like you got manipulated into it. And now you're just in defense mode. Like, I hope I don't get fired for signing this thing.
Yeah. And then there's no trust in the equation. I mean, trust is paramount to any relationship, personal or business. If it's a transaction, then trust is kind of a bystander in some ways.
Yeah. So focus on the problem and solution. So we're going to move on to the hot take lightning round. These are going to be quick answers as always. We're up against the clock. So let's see how fast you guys can answer these. Seth, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
What's the best approach to brand awareness that isn't a total waste of money in 2026?
I mean, I'm going to go back to organic social. I think it's worth spending time there. I wouldn't pick lots of channels. I think the other thing to think about is start with a channel that you put your time and energy into, figure out how that channel works. Like I talked about LinkedIn's algorithm, understand it intimately, measure it, track it, experiment with it. And once you figure it out, then scale it. And at that point, you can then figure out how to move on to other channels. But start in a very focused way and get it to a place where it's producing, and you can always go from there.
It's kind of like the positioning statement. Like
100%.
start small and then eventually grow from there. So what is the number one way marketing and sales can actually complement each other without creating friction?
Well, sales would always tell you, send us leads and then we'll love you guys. That's the sales answer. And marketing is always like, just appreciate us, sales. If you just appreciate even what you can't measure, like just know we're doing stuff. So I think that's that gut reaction kind of component. But I think when they work together, it's because they're saying the same things and it doesn't feel like there's a disconnect. So I would actually say your positioning strategy and how well you understand your ideal client and the profile of why they buy and what that looks like, that's actually what make those two things work, because everyone is saying the same things with the same intent. So marketing is finding success. And when that success is then driving into the sales funnel, sales doesn't feel like they're starting over. Like marketing just sold something they don't even do. And everyone, and customers don't feel the whiplash either. So I think like a coherent, consistent strategy that pulls those things together makes sales and marketing work super well.
Makes sense. What's more expensive, a bad hire in sales or a bad hire in marketing?
I'm going to say sales because you can, if you have a really awesome marketing engine and you have a bad salesperson, like there's no recovery there. And then if you don't have a marketing engine and all you have is sales, you can have a real big problem too. So I do think bottom of the funnel is the most painful place.
Can a world-class marketing engine eventually make a traditional sales team redundant?
No, that's my take. I think marketing, it depends on the business. I guess that's what I would also say. If you're selling a physical product or good, it is possible that in lots of situations, like consumer situations, right? I don't talk to a salesperson to go and buy a dessert or like to grab something at the store. So, but the store is doing sales. I mean, how they put it on the shelf and all of those things are sales motions. Marketing is what got you into the store. So there's a balancing act there, but those two things have to work together and they have to exist in some form in every business.
Gotcha. All right. Give one example of a food and beverage brand that is absolutely crushing marketing and sales.
Yeah, there's this really fun brand called Midday Squares. Midday Squares is a Canadian brand. They're moving into the US right now. They're growing like crazy. And the other fun part is they have documented their entire like process on socials. So the founders just talk constantly about like, here's what we're doing and here's how it's working. On the sales front, they have what they sell is these little squares that initially were chocolate, but if you've been looking at the grocery store, chocolate is through the roof from a price point. And so they just come out with these peanut butter and jelly squares. There's no bread involved. It's just like straight up jelly on peanut butter. They're phenomenal. They've got grape, they got strawberry. And they're built around this idea of a pick-me-up for the middle of the afternoon. So when that 2:00 period hits and you're tired, they show up and you pop one of these in your mouth and like, you know, it's just awesome. So their marketing is phenomenal. Their sales are great. The sales all happen at getting themselves into new retailers and they do an incredible job there. Like they're constantly building relationships through social, which is totally different with buyers. Buyers want to talk to them. They're kind of celebrities almost in this space. And then they translate that interest and desire into consumer want as well. So I see people posting pictures of them buying it and eating it more than any other product right now.
Wow. Interesting.
I've had them.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I've had them.
Okay.
They're good.
I had one this morning on the way here.
Midday Squares.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out.
Gonna go give them a try. Midday Squares, sponsored by no. No. Levi, we're gonna move to you.
All right.
So what's the biggest lesson you've learned the hard way about trying to sell without a marketing engine behind you?
Yeah, I'm trying to sell without marketing is, we've learned a lot of lessons. I'll fall back on a Stoic quote that I like where it's like, it's not about what you get at the end, it's about who you become along the way. And I think we've become who we are in year 5 because of all of those lessons learned, it's through years 1 through 4. But I think to Seth's point earlier, I think it starts with the foundational strategy where it's like, you can't, if you don't have marketing that's hitting your demographic and the people who you need to be talking to, then, you don't have anyone to sell to, let alone anything to sell in the first place. So yeah, I think, again, marketing in an ideal world, especially in our space, we're more of a service. And I think it's going to be a really hard cold sell if marketing doesn't open the door for you, to build that relationship.
Gotcha. Can one video actually serve both marketing and sales?
Yeah, I think one video could serve both for sure. And it often does. I just think, again, I think the knowledge that they are different and should be treated differently is paramount at the beginning of that process. But, I think marketing, I think they should serve each other. And I do think there's a world in which they can coexist in a single video, but it just needs to be, you need to be in alignment on those objectives at the front end.
Yeah, for sure. How do you define exactly where marketing's job ends and sales process begins?
Well, I'll start by saying I don't think marketing's job ever ends. I think marketing is 24/7, and trying to stay top of mind and awareness and want and desire, all these things. That's 24/7. But I'll go back to my quarterback wide receiver analogy. Like wide receiver can't catch the ball until the quarterback throws it, but they're on the same team running the same play from the same playbook. I think that's the biggest piece. And the same thing I said earlier as well, marketing opens the door for relationships. So if there has to be a handoff, like a clean handoff, I think it's, marketing opens the door for those relationships. As soon as sales comes in and starts developing that relationship, that's, if you need to have a handoff moment, I think it's somewhere in there.
So how do you know when your sales process has become vulnerable or outdated?
When it stops working.
I
didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. I think we all agree that we hate the phrase, that's the way it's always been done. That's the way we've always done it. Get that out of here. I think it used to be on our website. I don't know if it still is, but legacy thinking is a liability. Also, side hot take, I don't think you should wait for it to be outdated or vulnerable because you should be constantly refining and iterating. So hopefully, if you let it get that far, then you probably got an uphill battle ahead of you.
Yeah. Last question. What's the biggest misconception founders have about the relationship between these two departments?
We've talked about it a lot, but that they're the same. I think the biggest mistake is just assuming they're the same. And also I think a lot, in our industry specifically, I think we see a lot of people trying to cram sales language into what should be, pure marketing. If you're running an awareness campaign, you shouldn't be hard selling these people on an awareness campaign. So there's nuance to everything, and every industry is a little bit different, and products different than service, and all these things. But bottom line, they're not the same.
Gotcha. Well, that is it for episode 6 of Built on Brand, Sales and Marketing. If you haven't seen episode 5, it's AI and Creative. It's a good one. Go check that out. For now, I want to thank you, Levi and Seth, for coming, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, guys.